Today I'm going to tell you another amazing story. It will be about the basis of the basics antiquity. Antiquity. This is not just a special kind of art belonging to the early historical periods. Antiquity is something more. Antiquity is akin to heraldry. That heraldry, that antiquity. This is, in a sense, the beginning of the beginning. And antiquity in this sense is more important than heraldry. Our whole meaningless world of human beings began with antiquity. That is, in the beginning, ancient-looking structures appeared, and only then, the view of a modern human individual began to move through these magnificent structures. It sounds, at first glance, strange. After all, everyone knows from school that the first ancient buildings were built by the great Greeks. Then the baton was intercepted by no less great Romans. And there is nothing surprising in this. It's just that the Greek castes, having woken up one day, all together believed in the Olympic gods. And they liked these gods so much. And life in the reserves is so boring that the Greeks, abandoning all their business, began to build magnificent temples all along the coast of the Black and Mediterranean seas. The Greeks built an incredible number of ancient structures of all shapes and sizes. Then the ancient Romans mastered the Greek hobby. And ancient temples appeared in Africa, Asia, and of course, on the Iberian Peninsula. The architecture of ancient Rome is still the standard of antiquity. At first glance, there is nothing surprising in this. No one is surprised by the ancient temples and stadiums. After all, it was all built by the ancient Greeks and the great Romans. That's how it is. Well, that's what's weird. Everyone knows about the magnificent temples of Greece and Rome, and yet few people have heard about the incredible buildings located on the territory of modern Turkey. There are not just ruins of primitive cities in Turkey. Turkey is a place of accumulation of the most incredible and mysterious structures. I will give a very simple and very illustrative example. Ask yourself what you have heard about the largest ancient temple built entirely of marble. And when I say it in full, it means a marble foundation, marble walls, a marble column, and even the roof of this structure consisted of huge marble blocks decorated with complex decor. That is, from the foundation to the roof, the temple was completely marble. It sounds incredible, but there is such a temple in modern Turkey. And this is not a small new model of the 20th century. This is a huge structure that has been preserved almost by miracle. This temple has preserved a huge hall as a sarcophagus. In 1833, it looked something like this. 3 huge columns stick out of the hill. You won't immediately understand what it is. In the 1900th year, it already looks like this. There are 3 columns sticking out. Someone has put a mill in the middle, and around the mountain of broken blocks. These are not just blocks, they are partially crumbled blocks in the upper part of the temple. One might think that these are the traces of a catastrophe, an explosion, or a tidal wave. But it's not. The fragments of the blocks are the result of the work of archaeologists. In 1872, the first team of archaeologists from France, led by Olivier Rayet, arrived here. They cleared part of the hill and began excavations. In 1895, they were replaced by the brigade of Bernard O'Soulier. This talented archaeologist has found nothing better than to use dynamite to start undermining the fallen blocks of the roof and courtyard. In other words, the unique blocks of the largest marble temple, which has no analogues, were simply turned into rubble by French scientists. Some of the blocks miraculously survived, and all the roof blocks have a unique decor, which was simply barbarously destroyed by French archaeologists. If the French had dug up Didyme to the end, then I'm afraid we would have seen nothing but rubble in this place. But in 1905, the Germans replaced the French. Their director, Theodor Weigand, said in a caustic manner, "We will use a trowel." And for decades, German archaeologists have been very carefully excavating the temple. Only thanks to this, you can see this unique structure, which is unknown who, when, and for what purpose built. And most importantly, it is not clear how it is built. The nearest marble quarry is tens of kilometers away. The sea is far enough away. No preserved roads were found. That is, hundreds of years ago. It is unclear who moved hundreds of thousands of tons of marble across the mountains of Turkey. There are blocks of half a ton, and there are dozens of tons. It is unclear how these blocks were processed and adjusted. Everything is done perfectly, but how it is done is completely unclear. Historians say that this is a temple dedicated to Apollo. But it's not at all clear where they got it from. Not only inscriptions, but even bas-reliefs of Apollo or other ancient gods have not been preserved anywhere on the walls of the temple. It was not preserved because it was destroyed. These images simply didn't exist. There are bas-reliefs of Medusa, Gorgon, and Griffin. There is a lovely decor. The temple could be attributed to Medusa Gorgon, but historians dedicated it to Apollo without any evidence. The Gorgon-Medusa theme is also very interesting. This is some kind of hidden layer of history. The head and Medusa were decorated earlier by all ancient temples, the armor of Roman emperors, beautiful antique houses, and even the monument to Minin and Pozarsky in Moscow could not do without the bas-relief of the Bedouin behind the Gorgon. And at the same time, according to myths, the Gorgon is a negative character. That is, an evil monster. That is, the monster's head was decorated with all important things. Somehow this is very strange. But I will tell you about this in a separate video. The temple itself also looks strange. The first impression when you get inside is the pool. In general, there are hundreds of partially excavated and thousands of undiscovered structures of unknown purpose in Turkey. I didn't even know about it myself until recently. It's like a huge unknown civilization. It is unknown whose. It is neither Roman nor Greek. This is something else. These are real cities of an alien civilization, about which we know nothing at all, and which in the 19th century was attributed to the ancient Greeks. It's all so incomprehensible and illogical that I don't even know how to show and explain it all to you. I found myself in Turkey completely by accident, thanks to a true connoisseur of the forgotten past. He organized the trip and asked not to be named. It was he who personally asked Maxim from the Forgotten Ruins channel to show me all the unusual places. We drove hundreds of kilometers, and I saw something I didn't even know about. It's not just ruins. This is another illogical world, with an incomprehensible purpose created. These aren't even cities. This is a standard set of structures: theater, stadium, thermal baths, colonnade. There are no palaces, residential buildings, there is nothing for ordinary life. And when we say theater, stadium, it's just a designation of the form. These structures look like a theater, but no one really knows what it is. In other words, the original purpose of these objects is unknown. And there are hundreds of such sets only in Turkey. Theater, thermal baths, stadium, and colonnade. A very strange set of structures for an isolated place in the mountains where there are no roads and cities. This is somewhat similar to world exhibitions. When people were brought in, they were shown something and then taken away again. So it is here. They built structures similar to a theater, stadium, and thermal baths. They brought people, explained how the world works, and then took them away again. In general, everything is illogical, starting from manufacturing methods to transport logistics. Maxim from the Forgotten Ruins channel helped me figure it all out. He toured hundreds of sites in a year. Not only just fixing everything on video, Maxim is trying to figure out how it was done, why, and where the most interesting and illogical artifacts are located. In general, Maxim is exactly the person who knows the most about the illogical structures of Turkey. And so, I recorded a 2-hour conversation with Maxim, where we tried to touch on the most interesting issues. Of course, you won't know who built these cities. But most importantly, you will have the right questions in your head, and you will understand the full scale of the hidden story. And you will have a different look at the videos on the Forgotten Ruins channel. This is already going to post my walks through the ruins on Boost. What I shot in abandoned cities. Who is uncomfortable with Boost? Maxim posted almost the same thing for free on his channel. So, for those who are interested in a completely different history of antiquity, watch our conversation, and a lot will puzzle you. It will be like the beginning of a long investigation. Soon, I will post a video on YouTube about the strange technology of stone processing in ancient cities. A video about a jellyfish, a gorgon, and something concerning paranormal phenomena. I have recorded an inexplicable effect in an abandoned city. This is very unusual, and it was a complete surprise for me. So now I can safely say I've seen a paranormal phenomenon. And there will be a video about this soon too. So watch our conversation with Maxim, and I think it will be very informative. Well, Maxim, I came to Turkey to see how you live, what you do, why do you have such short videos? Explain it to me. And why are there so many of them? And why are there so many of them? I'm here. I didn't understand the purpose of your channel initially. I thought you were just like all tourists, running around the ruins, and shooting incomprehensible things aimlessly. So, I wanted to turn on the camera in this place, turned it on, and took pictures, then ran away further. What is the meaning of the channel? I do not understand. Well, actually, fortunately now, you understand, we talked about this a lot with you. There are too many places that can now be visited in Asia Minor. And we are located in the territory that is called Asia Minor. Anatolia, Lycia, Luvia were different at different times, including Ahhiava. Many names of this amazing region have been changed over the millennia. Now it is the blessed Turkish Republic in this wonderful land. 1,200 ancient cities, they certainly dictate to us. My only approach is this. If I visited, what is it like to visit this antique object? There may be several dozen interesting buildings and structures in it, thermal baths, a swimming pool, a theater. There are no amphitheaters, only theaters. The stadium, of course, galleries, and some other dungeons. Lots of everything. Freestanding statues, freestanding ruins somewhere nearby. And if everyone puts it together in one video, let's say a half-hour put it together. It's very, very difficult. If in half an hour, there are ruins that you need to walk for a day or two. For example, I visited Termes, but about 24 times. An amazing ancient city at an altitude of 1,400 kilometers. And there's no way I can put it down, fit it into a half-hour video. At least to something, but then you are forced to steal some object, or some part, or some fragment from your own viewers. Therefore, my mode, and I am now in the introductory mode, but I am already switching to other modes, to modes of comprehension. When I sit down on the ruins, sit near or stand near some interesting object. For example, you and I recently launched Aphrodisiades, or Aphrodisias, an amazingly ancient city. Probably the most beautiful ancient city that can be found here from what I know so far. And I sat down next to two huge heads of Atlanta, identical to St. Petersburg's Atlanta, and creatures that look most like avatars from Cameron's modern film, about an alien civilization existing on such an ideological planet. That's why, I literally shoot everything I see, and everything I don't sing, but I walk. I'm walking along the Rhine, my camera is shooting, I'm not paying attention to all the objects, because you have an idea about Termes. When to the horizon, we have filled up ruins with columns, buildings. Statues collapsed and arches collapsed or even stand and part collapsed. Curbstones, column bases, individual drums, and all this is like this in piles, sometimes mixed, sometimes broken, sometimes whole, more whole pieces, or with pressed even filled in or not filled in plants or not. But it lies, and you move along the road. The more point-wise my opinion will be shown, in more detail, perhaps more scrupulousness, I can't say yet, because for the scrupulousness of any column base, you can walk for several hours, tell and show amazing traces of processing on it, and its size and balance. Are you just fixing it for now? Yes, that's right. This is a way to fix it. Who's what? Here. Well, what is 1600 meters? It's very difficult to get there. Sometimes you walk 4 kilometers into the mountains. If you walk 4 kilometers every day, you can't go there. To remove as much as possible, to photograph as much as possible, to offer to people. Each person makes sense of his own. You saw something, and I saw something, and I posted more photos. Someone found it and made it. I know several people who take and make their own videos based on photos. I don't mind, because all of this is in the public domain, and ruins, they are inaccessible due to the fact that many do not live here, and do not know about them. I make it public, so to speak, because in most cases, do you have a goal just now to fix, at least offend all these ruins, just to film and watch, and then you will not speculate about it all, but how would you analyze it? Well, in parallel, it is clear that the analysis is going on in parallel, but it may not be so systematic. It only takes me 10 years to see the objects that are located in Asia Minor, so you will just shoot short videos for 10 years, and we will see the system analysis in 10 years. You know, there are already 9 years left, but I'm really diluting it. Then Jordan recently, then Lebanon, then again now with Lebanon. I will part with you immediately for a couple of days, and Lebanon will be again. Therefore, it is likely that the decade will stretch even longer. December, I want to visit Angkor and Cambodia. Parallel studies of Asia Minor are in any case a study. What's the big problem? Why? That I write everything down like that. I came once, everything is open. I came a second time. Something was excavated, something on the contrary was filled in. This is called conservation. That is, the object is closed, a closed mosaic. You wanted to look at them again, they were closed. This is right, because they need to be saved in some way. But, the object we have for perception, for the public, is in some way lost. Only photos and videos remain. Grilles are set up somewhere. This is also justified, because ruins are a very dangerous thing for a simple tourist, if you don't approach it meaningfully. You need to be very careful. I still have an interesting question about iron, metal. You said that there was some kind of metal hunger in Turkey. Here, people were just furiously looking for staples, stood in antique blocks, they were torn out, collected. The metal here was of great value at some time. I would not say that Turkey, because the Turkish Republic is actually 100 years old in 1923rd year, and we are unlikely to even talk about the Ottoman or Seljuk period. I assume that this is the period of another, emphasizing another catastrophe. Catastrophes, when quarries, when the mining sites were already completely filled up, the production sites were already completely filled up. Because we have the causes of an earthquake, there are reasons for incomprehensible destruction, when everything is simply crumbled. There is this reason, when everything was filled up, where to get metal from. Metal is necessary. A huge civilization collapsed. Collapsed in the literal sense of the word, when 20-25 meter objects, analogs, fell down. We call them ancient temples. In form, they are antique temples, so that the audience can imagine us. It was necessary. These cities have no walls. It was necessary to defend themselves somehow. It is possible to defend a person. A person is protected, if in primitive ways, and not primitive, highly developed. Whatever you want to call it, it is protected by weapons. Weapons made of metal in the first place. Yes, today, it has become electronic. Today, we are talking about different ways. That's when, if we perceive this, combine it with the Middle Ages. Swords, spears, bows, a huge layer of human history lies in our museums. It is these very swords, copies of bows, on which many very clearly show that they were reforged, forged from something, and reforged in the first Osheti ospreys, which are good in shape if you get out of the beautiful. Ancient blocks were fastened together. Yes, they held the blocks together. You and I have seen several objects. This is best seen in the reception, where they didn't climb, or it was very difficult to climb, or high, or it was filled in, there these brackets survived. And did you see the metal of what quality? Very good metal. And where they could, they took out everything. Moreover, the blocks were divided between the blocks, if they are standing, by a huge megalithic wall, meter-thick blocks. They broke the intended place between them, took it out, and then reforged, unbend the bracket. It's clear, heat it up, unbend it, reforge it into a weapon. The process is complex, but the extraction of metal and, provided the mines are filled in, lost industrial method. The iron was heavier, the chips were fastened with lead, yes or what? Yes, they are flooded with us. Well, presumably lead. Why am I saying presumably? Because there is only one distinct analysis of metal. It was made in the ancient civilization in Carthage, North Africa. I have already visited Carthage. The Dutch university conducted a good analysis of this. We have the rest of the tests. Andriy Skliarev has several tests in the video. He was also doing some kind of metal analysis. But here is such a systematic approach that for each city, you would be able to extract and look at the composition of the metal. It is very difficult. Recently, my friends from Moscow also gave metal analysis to the laboratory, in the official laboratory. Everything is very much from the Egyptian pyramids to be more precise. Well, it showed very clean, shows very pure metals in the main result. So there's also such a question here. You used to give it all to the Greek civilization as it were. The gods of Olympus. It's all here. You've talked very well about this topic. And he sighed. There's all these great ones, there's Mercury there. Mouse. I was really following the mythology, because to push off. This civilization is not Greek, Hellenic or Roman. We are very clearly convinced by just thousands of examples that we have masterpieces, whether it's a separate pedestal or a huge whole building, and on it somewhere in a corner, right here from the edge here, or somewhere above, or in general, it is written exclusively in a crooked way. Literally, we were joking about the nail. Here it was hollowed out by something extremely primitive, to the point that they were hammering with a sharp pebble on a pebble or trying to scrape with some kind of stone. And the original inscriptions, the original texts, which would correspond in quality to the works. Michelangelo has the same story. He has an exceptionally crooked, fiercely crooked signature, is the only one. On his masterpieces, there are more, and on one of his masterpieces, there is no signature at all. The same thing in antique. So I went the way of myths. Myths reflect regional myths, and the myths of the so-called ancient Greece are primarily fixed here. I mean, they were fixed geographically in the Middle East and Asia Minor. Hercules comes here. Argonauts are sailing for the Golden Fleece across the Sea of Marmara. I recently visited Cyzicus. The temple was once larger in size than Baalbek and larger than Didyma, which I think we will talk about today. Well, more than Baalbek is probably already an indicator. Or, it is a Shernik, and by its very size, almost twice the size of the great temple of Baalbek. Zeus defeated Typhon. I live in the Mercy region. It's next to Natalia Regan. Zeus defeated Typhon. The cave is now called Hell and Paradise. Once I thought that there was an entrance to Hades, and there you still descend, despite being buried in an underground cave on the way. The river Styx hums like an airplane. It is heard that this underground river, which is reflected in myths, along which souls descended, Hercules himself descended there, and defeated Cerberus. It's all located here on the territory. Zeus stole the queen and Princess Europa from the territory of Lebanon. Many heroes, and all the myths we have, go through Asia Minor, not in the main way, not in the main Greece, Balkan Greece. We cannot say it is the main one, it is the outskirts of the ancient world. So of course, I relied on it from the antique, but something went wrong. And we didn't have enough. We also have a famous temple in Didyme. In very narrow circles, the structures are, yes, made of marble blocks. It is unique in that it is completely made of marble. And there, of course, we already have the faces of the Olympic gods in this temple. You know well, it's the exact opposite, just like everywhere else. We have nothing of the signs of mythology that we are used to, where Hercules is, this killer, rapist, terrorizing just the population, and killing entire peoples, titanic peoples. They are called, for example, centaurs or Amazons. Nothing is reflected in the architecture of not only Didyme or Didymaon is the largest, let's explain to the audience the largest marble temple in the world. It is twice as large as the Baalbek Great Temple in terms of the number of columns, 50 to 120, even almost 2.5 times. And it is clear that its safety is excellent. Miraculously he was lucky, miraculously in quotes, yes. And he was unlucky, he was covered with something on the plane, and I think about the backfill too. The topic is still floating in our country, so I filled it up, it was preserved for us. There we will find neither the image of Zeus, nor the image of Hera, nor the images of heroes. The same heroes, well, that is, I mean murderers. Let's say, Perseus also kills. Goes the hard way, but still kills the unfortunate victim of circumstances there, with a Gorgon jellyfish. We will not find any bas-reliefs, so that some viewers may object to me, they will say, well, there are bas-reliefs with some gods, with some heroes. We are talking about the typology of architecture. In the architecture of the antique decor is not something separate. That is, statues can be imagined. We, for example, our decor after we installed the walls, inserted windows, doors, we stick the decor, sculpt, glue, sew, screw, install some kind of solution. There is nothing like that in the ancient buildings of real, true antiquity. Our decor is part of the supporting structure, and these bas-reliefs, they were either attached later, or changed, or simply stuffed. And the bulk of these are blocks. And where there is an image, this image, for example, of Dodine, dominated by huge, simply enormous gorgons, we no longer have to speak in the singular. And according to the myth, there were 3 sisters in fact. Well, not only the jellyfish thinks that here is a jellyfish depicted, just a large number of identical heads and griffins. The griffin is considered a symbol of Apollo, but the temple refers to Apollo on the basis of this statement, completely ignoring the jellyfish. Some gorgons, some believe, express, I'm talking about the official position. Some refer to mythology and say that the jellyfish was, according to ancient mythological genealogy, was a relative of this Apollo, so it was depicted. But we get a paradox. They depict huge heads, huge silhouettes or griffins or jellyfish. No Zeus, no Apollo, no symbolism, except for the lyre. Here is the lyre of Apollo. It is depicted in the center, in one place, but it is depicted here in the palm of your hand. That's it. We will not find any other analogues. Inscriptions that would confirm the original, or even secondary inscriptions, we have that this is the temple of Apollo. Or, for example, Vezanoy, a huge temple. I also visited in the center of Turkey, miraculously survived, with a huge dungeon. And the dungeon is also a special conversation. A bas-relief was found there. The bas-relief is crookedly made, in no way correlated with the temple itself. That's why I look up like that, because it's huge. The bottom of the dungeon, which is located under it, and on this bas-relief, we are told by Zeus. Nearby there is the same bas-relief of the same Zeus, and saying, who is this? A man will show me. Why do I say human, not even an archaeologist? I do not know if he is an archaeologist, or there is an employee hired just digging. He does the work. He says, this is Zeus. I say, who is this? He says, this is Hera. I say, they are the same. He says, nods yes to me. I say, why? It's not Zeus, it's not Hera, if you can't tell them apart. They shrug their hands at me. In other words, bas-reliefs are either presented, as well as antique stats of ancient gods and heroes, we either have them, but they are never anywhere part of the original design. It turns out that, in the temple, which is dedicated to Zeus, or Apollo, we do not have a statue of Apollo, nor a bas-relief of Apollo, on the outer surface of the temple. There are no inscriptions that would clearly show that they have allocated a place and written this temple of Apollo. There is no such thing. Absolutely right. These are versions only from the words of the researchers who conducted. Let's go back to Zakop. This temple has already been preserved simply in the unique quality of the unique preservation of the structure. Yes, and it has been preserved because it was before. It used to be a hall with only 2 columns sticking out of it. 3, yes, 3 columns. We have 3 columns. And 2 processed, 1 unprocessed. 20-meter columns. That's right. What fell asleep? We meet backfills. And it's not just a wave. The wave would have washed away the structure. Many structures would have been scattered across the valley. Didim is located in a lowland. In a lowland, it is located in a valley, let's say, on a plain. There are no mountains where the mudflow would come from, even close, even on the horizon is not visible. The sea is considerably far away, and the sea is high. But, even if it were the sea, water, if it is water with a mass of liquid, how much would it be distributed along this level quite tightly, evenly? And here, it turned out that at home, and suddenly, for no reason, a hill. It's not a mound. The hill is a big, decent place from which you can view the neighborhood for many kilometers. We will meet the same hill in Miletus. There is a theater Phildon, which also stands in the center of the valley, and such large hills, under which theaters are located, found necropolises, found a temple-type structure, found thermal baths. We have all of them concentrated, that is, the concentration of mass, and it's not just a mass of clay or earth or sand or dust there. They also sow. But it's volcanic or desert dust there. We were in abandoned these places, and therefore the dust brought them. No, this is a clear batch for us. Kneading in one place from the same ceramics, bones. Bones terribly mutilated, broken, insignificant. Sometimes a tooth came across, sometimes a fragment of the skull, but mostly it also got into the bones just broken. And marble, which is exactly the same broken. That is, all the cladding, all the decor, and even the supporting structures are broken somewhere. It was all mixed up on one thing. Somehow, I'm not explaining how now, but the kneading takes place in one place, and a hill is formed, miraculously preserved to us a lot. But it's not logical. Well, so a hill can be formed on a flat. In a valley, where there is no mountain nearby, where there is nothing. I understand a hill made of sand. Slaves arrived with sandbags, carefully sprinkled everything, and made a neat mound. And we get a hill, we have it there zabutovka, ceramics, teeth. The tree is even very small. We have never had a tree. In some incomprehensible way. I don't know, some kind of clay. There are different kinds of masses. But there is a lot of clay, yes. It turns out that a hill grows out of nothing. It's like a miracle. This requires, of course, further research and explanations. The question of why official science is not engaged in such research is so open and hangs a huge question. Because the one who digs, for example, Latakia, completely removes the hill and columns, 7-meter columns. But also the pedestal of the columns themselves are 7-meter columns, and similarly a 7-meter zasip. They even resisted, that is, they were simply covered. If this wave, the columns would have been demolished. And some of our structures are completely filled in. Absolutely, they are not demolished, yes. There are fallen ones, but they are standing there. And not just fallen. We will meet, and if it was a wave, or a flood, as they say, there was a big wave, then we would have, as for example, Andrei Yuryevich Sklyar of Salmaine with his team showed, their clearly directed blocks were demolished in one direction. Here, we have destruction absolutely coming from the center. We have drums, columns, these column segments, they are not all solid. For example, 20 meters is not a solid column, it is created from drums. They are scattered up to 30, sometimes 40 meters apart. I doubt they were just pulled apart. It is clear that the columns did not just fall in different directions, they did not just fall in, something inside, something out, but flew in different directions. But to the question of falling asleep, I mean that slaves should take it and fall asleep. You know, official science has such a version, but it applies. I visited Mesopotamia in the fall. Not everyone knows that 1/4 of Mesopotamia is in Syria, and 1/4 is here in Turkey. And 2/4, that is, exactly half of us are already in Iraq. A little more hooking Iran. So, the Tigers of the Euphrates, these rivers originate here in Asia Minor, on the territory of the Turkish Republic. I swam on the Euphrates. The impressions are incredible. The deepest river is wide. This is certainly not the Volga, but it will be half of the Volga in width. In other words, the river is simply impressive, where the banks are decorated as if they purposefully punch channels. And there is Gibik and so on. It is a well-known place, ancient, and it is believed that this is the oldest sanctuary on earth. And how the official science explains his fall asleep. It already means 21 such objects that someone, namely ancient people, very ancient people of the Neolithic era, they somehow took 4 5-meter steles, thin to 30 centimeters thick, a meter wide, T-shaped. Separated from the rock, how they were separated without even asking, as possible without metal already, without saws. That is, they officially have only the most primitive stone tool. They installed these sanctuaries in a circle. There are several circular centric forms, and then they took it themselves, and ritually filled it all in. But what only ritually scientists? But they were covered with sand. But they are covered with the same mass, batted, ground. I posted it. Yes, I made 4 videos about it. Why am I shooting synchronously like this? So that everyone just sees. I pay attention, I say, they are covered with a broken mass, and the general impression is that all these T-shaped column fragments have already been assembled from something else. Here is the impression that there was a better type of structure, it fell apart, then they put it up, and then it fell asleep. That is, we have one Zaisip, but we need to somehow explain the ancient Zaisip by the Mesopotamians. There's a plain and those hills again. Therefore, there is even an official version that these madmen first created ritual ones. But I'm talking about ancient people, they were drawing something crazy for us. In fact, how to explain religious insanity? Officially, it is believed to us that they indulged in religious ecstasy. They believed so much that they built temples of all stripes, of all types, for thousands of years. Then, they took the same thing in addition to everything and fell asleep themselves, in ritual exclusively. So, now back to the question. Such a gorgeous temple as Didimi, it is described by hundreds of historical faculties. Hundreds of doctoral monographs are devoted to this temple all over the world. It's just a unique structure. It's beautiful. I do not know where else and in the world there are completely marbled. It is a completely marble temple, because even the blocks from which the walls stand and the foundation on which it stands, it is also all made of marble. This is a unique structure. Looking for the quality of this marble. Yes. And the processing quality, yes. And just 400s of books dedicated to this temple. Let's invite your viewers to indicate in the comments who initially heard about Didim or Didi Mo before our dialogue, and heard about Didim or Didi Mo before our videos. They call them differently. I think most will say in general, where is it and what is it? My friends, we have recently finished shooting a powerful movie, but we have not finished. They will continue in Lebanon. The European director of Russian origin, Viktor Kosakovsky, made a film about architecture. He turned to me as a consultant, attracted me. And there were 2 Italians with him. Italians were born in Rome, that is, the Romans. Here are the classical Romans in the truest sense of the word. The Romans are patriots. The Romans are patriots, they cannot but be patriots. Since childhood, I'll just hide it to them, everyone in the house, it's not just at school, but everywhere, to explain that you live in a real center, in the center of the ancient world, who benefited everyone. And when on the first day, we watched Didi, and Malay and Pri, but we needed to determine those points, locations of filming for filming. And in the morning, Filippo came out, and he had the face of someone died. I say, Filippo, what happened? Here's a happy one. He says, Max, my rating is Rome. And he just started crying, tears welled up in his eyes. My rating of the world, and he showed it like that with 2 hands. Collapsed by 50%. Didn't fall. It collapsed by 50%. Yes, he appreciated it so much. It is clear that more collapsed. That is, he sincerely believed that this one was converted by Blinfina, not just restored, but all glued together. Assembled of mostly beaten stone. Yes, Rome is a masterpiece. Smeared, tinted, restored great. But, when you see the original Didymus, where there is no restoration, where there is no fragment, there is not even a solution there. You and I almost smeared one column there, with a little restorer's concrete. In general, as dug up. That's what Philip says. Max, why about Dima 0 information? So 0 information shows 0 information in Western sources. He says, I searched all night and found nothing anywhere. That is, in Italian, but if we say, they always position themselves as the center. Rome, as the center of the ancient world, conducted many Italians conduct research. They got into Mercy and dug it out, though they called the former thermal baths, called the pool, called the turn around the city square. But I've already given up on it, because archaeologists often call names at random. And we will not meet. We will meet only a small report. We have it, well, as a small 1 centimeter. This is a considerable report, but most of them are still photographs. Where German archaeologists, their delegations, expeditions, recorded the excavation process, collected those rare photographs. Because, before the beginning of the 20th century, it would have been just a hill, there was a mill, well, columns sticking out. Fortunately, the Zaisips have preserved this ancient heritage before us. They did not allow the following other cultures, including the Hellenes, to inscribe on it. You didn't see any beech trees there, except for some Byzantine handwriting there at all. Well, we won't find letters texts in Didim. Therefore, on the one hand, we are waiting. And what the official history says constantly writes, but it doesn't say anything. It just keeps a deathly silence. Perhaps something is being written somewhere. That is, some conferences are held, someone tells that he has dug up a vessel or a piece. Fragments show enthusiastically statues broken off, or even find a whole statue, which in general is a sensation. Now archaeologists already have a whole jug to find, well, split, but at least in one place glued together. It's all sensational. You can already write a dissertation about it. And the fact that there are huge structures and entire complexes, I do not want to call them cities. And probably we will also say for what reason they are not cities after all. So, keep silent. Keep silent. Or it is. Information revolves in a highly specialized field of conferences where their own tell their own. How much at the conference? A big conference is 200 people. A small one is 30-50 people. Magazines? Yes, there are magazines. Something is being produced. Well, it's an article there. What is an article about? These are 2, 3, but sometimes 7 leaves. Something is slipping through somewhere. And so the temple stands. No research, excavations since the 90s. Nothing the world community in any way. Either he's not interested, or he doesn't know. It's interesting that there's no marble deposit nearby, right? We don't even have mountains there at all. For the same reason. No. You remembered the landscape? We are, yes. The mountains we can probably take. But we have 70 kilometers of this one. But what is 70 kilometers for these megaliths, when each block is not even a ton? Each block is close to a cubic meter. That is, there are 2, 3, 7, 12 tons of drum columns. This is already processed. And what is a raw block? There are thousands. It's hundreds of thousands of tons. It's millions, I think. Taking into account he's not a dig, you understand how much more the platform is huge. In the pharmacy, this huge one is clearly visible. It is called the pre-antique platform. I'm questioning now, is it antique? Here is a large temple, and Andrei Yuryevich Sklyarov spent a lot of effort on the trilithon, and show that the ancient temple stands on an ancient platform. Now I'm starting to think that this is a commonality, because under every ancient temple, there are powerful arched structures. Baalbek. The Baalbek platform is an underground structure, made of powerful blocks. You and I in Termes saw large blocks, how they would look if they were underground on the surface of the foundation. The foundation could not have been, otherwise these structures would have collapsed long ago. Somewhere in the middle, they would have cracked. And Didim is great. Save. I have a complete impression, my personal subjective opinion, that this is a fully planned one structure, platform and temple. They are fully integrated. They are completely correlated in quality to each other. Everything is there. Everything is logical, everything is reasonable. It's not that there was a platform, and then someone came and built a marble temple. But it's like, someone platform crazy in thousands. Marble, yes, 900 tons. Who doesn't have a nearby deposit there? It is clear that the deposit was 100 meters there. They are made of marble, because they are nearby to transport. And here we have a deposit dozens of kilometers from there. And we build a platform, and then someone comes, and also made of marble. Which one? Hundreds of thousands of threshold, which is not there, builds a temple. And for some reason, historians may tell about this temple in very narrow circles, like we have a channel with you. We are very famous people, just very. A well-known person in narrow circles is joking. Yes, in fact, well, for example, I generally believe that information comes to whoever it comes to. Therefore, some apologists, those who are passionate about the textbook of the ancient world for the 5th grade, those who regularly smoke it, of course, it is unlikely that our channels will be able to see a rational grain in them. They tell me, translate the texts of sarcophagi. Translated hundreds of texts of sarcophagi I have studied. And what does it say? It is written praising those Hellenes who are buried there. Written in crooked letters. We saw it with you. It's not even written, it's exactly what they drew. Absolutely. Scratched, crooked, where there should be no texts. On the decor in any free place, it is written that there is such a Greek who had so many slaves, or here he pressed olive oil, or here is the wife of this Greek. Everything is written about it. Nothing else. A laudatory, simple little text of this content. It's the same under the statues, or the name, or sometimes that it is an honorary citizen of such and such a city. But it turns out that, in the temple in Didymus, we have nothing at all related to the Olympic gods, to the myths that we are told, that Zeus came true, that the code on the Olympian gods that we worshipped, there is no hint. These are jellyfish and griffins, jellyfish and griffin, and this is absolutely everywhere. We will find either a floral ornament, or we will find a jellyfish totally on every sarcophagus, on the theater, well, in all the structures of the jellyfish, you can always go, most of all on sarcophagi. On all the armor of the Roman so-called emperors, stone statues are 3 or 4 meters high, even more. Alexander the Great has only a jellyfish on all his mosaics. Well, Macedonian, he didn't seem to have his own coat of arms. The Roman Empire had an eagle, so this eagle, or somewhere down the side, right almost on the knees, is engraved crookedly. It looks like chicken legs. Here is such a one, so primitively made, or he's nowhere at all. Well, and the head of the Roman emperor, they are also mostly screwed. Therefore, who is there initially but armor, original armor, and festive armor? Not like the military in the form of a festive one. On, brother, for the weekend. Yes, we call them armor. A festive outfit, in fact, because, down to the smallest details of shoes, we were convinced with you. Not that the folds of clothes, but shoes. And there's a jellyfish reflected there. Sometimes there are griffins on the belt. Often very, but not always. Medusa always. Griffins very often, and very rarely. Draw Roman eagle. There is a lion. It turns out that we have a kind of great Rome. They have an eagle symbol. There is an ancient pantheon of gods there. But we don't use all the gods. We only use the Medusa symbol. In the place of honor, on the chest, and on the accounts, we have a jellyfish. We have jellyfish everywhere. But Medusa, as it were, is not a deity with us. Not only is she not a deity, she is declared a monster that really did not destroy anyone. According to the myth, she was raped by Poseidon. She was endowed with this terrible gift of turning inorganic matter, that is, bodies, into inorganic matter, that is, into stones. She will hide so as not to harm anyone. She climbs to a distant island, sends the Olympians there without stopping. They send their demigods to finish off. Many heroes go, no one gets there, or everyone dies there. Turned into stone, this very Perseus gets special sandals, gets a conditional address, coordinates where to find this island. After all, he beheaded Medusa. Then I was in shock. Indeed, the myth continues. Antiquity does not end with the death of Medusa. Athena, for example, takes 2 vessels of her blood from us. From this blood, a crypt makes the medicine of eternal life. That is, a miraculous way. Everything, even the blood. From Medusa. Medusa supposedly gave birth, but we have a Pegasus or her severed head. On this crooked horse, Perseus ascends to ask from the Olympians there to Olympus. What did he do? Why did they send destroy? That is, this part is lost. Unfortunately, we have a theme of Titans, the Titanide jellyfish. She is the first generation, Olympic. In general, so abbreviated. Medusa was killed in vain. The jellyfish was not just killed in vain, it was purposefully destroyed. She wasn't in fact a monster. Yes, she could turn living matter into inanimate, but she did not attack cities, did not attack peasants. She just, when she was awarded this terrible gift, she hid so as not to hurt anyone. Right? Yes, on the contrary, to harm. She hid, but Perseus found her anyway, says, and you hid, but I'm going to kill you anyway. Yes, he is being sent, because Athena throws a cry, but who will still kill Medusa. And here it is called. In other words, it is a constant theme that demigods are destroying the ancient Thoic and Titans with ancient fogs to live on Earth. Right now I'm going over it, that's right. Let's turn to myths, because myths are like a thing with us. Well, from the distant past, someone figured out how abstract the beauty of these fairy tales. You see, if we have a jellyfish, why create such a complex image? We have her in principle, this innocent creature. I don't know woman. Well, the theme. Who was rewarded with this terrible gift. She hid. This is a positive character for us. It turns out that he was defamed, but despite all this, the fact that she was killed, the fact that she hid, for some reason, this image of Medusa is used in our armor by the Roman emperors. It means very important. Macedonian before them is depicted. If it was an objectionable story, there, let's say, who is more history and valuable, Lenin or the party, then Medusa would simply be erased from history, because at least 500 years have passed there. I say there are thousands, so most likely, yes, at least 500 years. So let's reason intelligently. From 500 and more years. During this time, you can destroy any myth, any legend. But despite all this, it's like our history intersects with heraldry. For some reason, we have the image of a jellyfish. It has been preserved for centuries simply, and for some reason, it is constantly. Even here is a monument to Minin and Pozharsky on the shield. We will again see a jellyfish. And what to do? Medusa. This is a character. If you listen to official myths, then this is a monster. Negative. A negative character. If we study the myths in detail like Maxim, we will see that the jellyfish is not a visibly affected creature. Because I am incomprehensible Titanides. With great force, at the same time, possessing great power of unknown origin. And it turns out that we have myths preserved for all the illogicality of this story, because history is illogical. We create characters, endow them with negative qualities, they defeat him, and at the same time, we keep the character. On a huge temple in Dijum. A huge temple. And not only everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. He is also in Turkey, Cyprus, Italy, and Italy itself. Totally. In Russia, the monument to Minin and Pozharskaya, not only there, in other places too. And just in Russia, on the territory of our country, they are even found in special terms called Garganians. The 10th, 11th century, they are referred to as 1, 10th, 11th, well, sometimes Dvenation. Then, by the 12th century, Christianity begins to dominate more and moves away from it. Garganians are special protective amulets. Some translate, official historians translate the name Medusa, not for, but for. Medusa as a protector. Muse is a protective talisman. In Judaism, for example, Muse also has such a name. But it's strange that the monster, which has sharply negative properties, suddenly our central character, is not Zeus. Yes, the supreme god, do you understand? Not one of them, not even these Apollons. Another moment that the Titans appear. First of all, the Titanomachy as an epic, as an integral legend, has been completely lost. We have the myths of ancient Greece, meaning about the gods and the so-called heroes who were heroes, in fact, are murderers. And before the ancient, or rather before the Olympic Titanic heritage, fragments of the Titanomachy were considered to have been preserved somewhere. Yakov Manovich Golosovker, a talented translator, started in Tsarist Russia, and collected Titans from him just in Kazan perfectly. First of all, I draw books from there. But we still have two vivid myths. The myth of Prometheus and the myth of Medusa. And there it turns out, but if there is a direct reference in Prometheus, that Prometheus has high moral qualities. According to our myth, he creates people at the request of the Olympian gods, first on the side of Zeus. Then he, seeing the barbaric, savage, fierce, just bloody attitude of the Olympians to humanity. And we don't have any myths where people were benefited. Olympic myths are myths of violence of super beings over people. And he's on the side of Lytis. He is an exceptionally moral, positive, 100% character. He is the creator, the demiurge for humanity, not Zeus. He and his protector. And now the demiurge is considered to be somehow negative. Well, you know, there are so many words playing right now. Now what word don't you say? A lot. Now the word fill is already as you like. Concrete words with us, we have reached simple construction concepts, which are also interpreted anywhere for any reason and for no reason. Well, the demiurge is initially the first creator, Here the demiurge in this case is Prometheus, not the Olympian Zeus. If we take Medusa as a victim of circumstances, if she is endowed with a terrible gift or ability to leave, so as not to harm people, she also has moral qualities that none of the Olympian gods possesses. Beautiful, wonderful, kind as they say, Apollo patron, Moose peels the skin off Marcia. Just skinned him alive, just because he lost to him in a competition. Here we have two bright ones. That is, our heroes have become either murderers or Olympian gods who treat a person exclusively, not just badly, but terribly, fiercely, overly bloody. And those become monsters. But myths don't. They are very difficult to deceive. People's consciousness, that's some kind of depth. Therefore, Prometheus remained positive. Therefore, we have Medusa absolutely everywhere in this ancient architecture. And I'm starting to think that the discrediting of the jellyfish is precisely because it is to contrast this multifaceted image, which is replicated everywhere in stone, to knock down a part of the stones. Well, that is, to break off the jellyfish. This means destroying the structure itself. In order not to destroy the structure, it's better to tell this story that Medusa is a monster. But it's still this. It doesn't matter why they have this myth. They could already have this one. Well, we see a bas-relief, a woman, but no one knows what kind of woman it is. You could call her a goddess just like that. Well, it's hard, you know. Goddess of snakes. It is difficult to exclude a lot of things from the people's consciousness 100%. And yes, it can be changed, people can forget, the continuity of generations is broken, but not everything goes away, as it is simply completely erased. Even with the word Titan, it seems to me that something deep begins to slowly pronounce it, even something deep is stirred up. Maybe this is my perception, I can't say, but there is something. And how are we doing with logistics? How were huge blocks dragged after all? And maybe the equals carried 2 tons in bags. Well, 2 tons each is fine, but they gave us more than that. They explained to us in Baalbek 900 tons. Moreover, There are no roads from the Baalbek quarry. There are about 2 kilometers to Baalbek itself, 900 tons per thousand. The next block. He generally has a block under the southern stone. I went down to them. They are even bigger, 1,200 tons already. 1,000 is worth 1,200 tons. That is, they are even bigger, even deeper. The man who the caretaker digs out there himself, he has already measured. I will also double-check really. Here's another interesting question. We see that in the temple in Dijum, that in the theater of Miletus, we see incompleteness. And the incompleteness is very strange. People could do very well, handled the stone very easily. Let's not say that this is high technology. They just did it well. Maybe the process is not complicated, not difficult, but unknown to us. That's how I agree. Yes, like him. The impression that it was easy. Yes, the impression is that it's easy. We are not by not understanding. Personally, I looked at a lot of places not Maxim showed. It's unclear how they did it. It can be seen that they were processed very easily. It doesn't look like a soft stone, like I used to think, for example. And we succeed. Here we have ease of processing, and in many places, we simply have not finished the ornament. The column has not been finished, the flutes have not been selected. And just like a feeling, as if it was all built, and at one point, they abandoned it all and left. And they were not connected with the disaster, because after them came the ancient Hellenes, with nails began to scratch the tablets. Then the Byzantines came, they began to make crooked buildings out of stones, and then the crooked buildings of the Byzantines fell asleep. But it was originally unfinished. Like this. Unfinished construction is ubiquitous. Except for Aizanoi and that, here is a temple with a large dungeon and that, I think we just need to look carefully. Maybe there too. But, there is a sense of completion, completeness in general, only in one place. And I have already visited several hundred, well, 1,500, let's say, just objects today. That is, the location. There can be 10 buildings and structures on the location. In other words, thousands of people have already looked at this building. They are all completely unfinished. Not just unfinished, the frames are assembled, sometimes there are columns, huge columns of sart. Right now, just posting a video. Almost 2 meters, a little less than in Didim, in Boroduk, in Xikos. But the columns, paradoxically, began to be produced from above, processed, highlighting these hemispherical flutes. But they were abandoned. And we have abandonment at the level, at the stage of decoration. We have to talk. Most likely, they were completed as a whole. Although in some places, there is an impression that the building material itself is missing. That is, if there were stone roofs up to such a state. The number of columns, for example, in Didim, is 120 pieces. In each column, we just roughly counted somewhere around 15 reels with us. Accordingly, we should have these huge drums scattered here. We don't have about 1,000 columns like this. We can't pick up there with many hundreds of reels. Where did they go? Either there was an unfinished building up to the columns, or maybe they certainly collapsed, crumbled, but still something was visible. Who stopped? For what reason? Everything stopped at once on the whole, on a huge territory. I stopped here, I stopped in North Africa, in Carthage. Baalbek stopped, and Baalbek is completely unfinished. If naive people think that the great temple of Baalbek was completed, it is extremely rash. In the best form, but we have an unfinished small temple. Small only in name, not in size. It's huge and better preserved. And the great temple of Baalbek is the same. Drums of someone without processing. The decor, paradoxically, is only worked out in the upper part. That is, the higher, the better the processing. The lower, the turnaround is worse, worse, worse. Or it comes down to just a rough stone that has not yet succumbed to the feed of primary processing, separation, respectively. From the rock. We don't have any other processing. Huge territories, huge. We are getting it. Here we have the main riddle, I'll tell you. Here we have a mystery in logistics. We can. As the development of that society shows in our country. We had carts, they're 2-wheeled, 4-wheeled. And on these carts, we easily transported 50-ton blocks, sometimes 100-ton blocks, for tens of kilometers. We have hundreds. Sorry to interrupt. We have granite deposits. That's where the places where there is granite, 400s of 170 220 kilometers. That is, granite is generally a big question here. There are marble mountains here, and granite is much further away. Well, we even bring marble to the marble. In the same Didim it's tens of kilometers. We have a second mystery, backfilling. We have Didim covered with a hill in the middle of the plain, roughly speaking, like many structures, like many others. Illogical backfilling. If it was such, I don't know, dust storms, there would be clean sand there. And here we will have huge stones, all villages are excluded, there are no mountains. Cave. It doesn't work out. A huge wave. It's being washed off. Us. We wouldn't have columns in such a beautiful. Because many of the columns in Didim stood. There is one neat column that has fallen. But it doesn't look like a tidal wave at all. Because the other columns are standing. They were still sticking out. We have 2 columns from the hill. It turns out that the hill seems to have fallen asleep from above. The impact of such a mass would have demolished the columns. Would have carried them far to survive the columns. And tear down the walls. And we have them. Here is the riddle of this filling. We have a hill. We still have the mystery of the shortcomings of the structures. Because it is visible on all structures. Here Maxim has already traveled around for some time. A lot, Jewer, more than 150, somewhere 157. 150 abandoned cities are not even cities, they are abandoned construction sites. Points. Yes, because now it is difficult to determine the purpose of these places. And everywhere, either in the decor, or the incompleteness of deconstruction, is visible everywhere. Not finished. Well, almost the finish line. Almost. 90. About 80–90%. Already. 80% ready. And the people who built it just stopped the construction. Then came the very highly developed Greek migrants. Settlers with nails. They drew letters everywhere, interesting texts where someone died. And then the Byzantines came and began to build their Byzantine fortresses out of small stones. And then, it all fell asleep. In addition, we have a third riddle. Here, well, up to 30 riddles. Fourth in general, why did they stop? I mean, what stopped it? The structures were intact, but all construction stopped. Didim is officially considered to have been built for 600 years. About 600 years. 600 years. We don't have many states that can boast of a 6-year history, that they have existed for 600 years. Most of our empires have collapsed, or else, there have been no states for 600 years. The name has changed, even the population has changed during this time. But imagine here, it's 600 years, it's 4, if we take a short lifestyle, a long life. We'll take 20 or 30 years there, 4, 5 generations, and multiply by 600 years, respectively. Well, I just had many dozens of generations to fanatically build a bright future. It is unclear what they are building at all. What is gigantism? Yes, it's still unclear. There is also a unique descent there. When you go up, you can get into the temple from top to bottom. There are inclined or down. And when I came down, his first thought was that I had fallen into the pool. The full feeling of the pool, a huge pool with decor on top, but just there it is not sealed, therefore. Well, it seems very strong. We talked about why, after all, not a pool, but as a reservoir for, if we are talking about some kind of gas. If you burn a certain herb there, then everyone who went down there will receive an equal dose of the right substance. He will enter through one tunnel to God. We symbolically ascend. Yes, temples ascend, God is somewhere above. Here is a statue of Zeus, by the way, to the question of statues. However, the statues were later brought to these temples. They weren't part of the original design, that's what I mean. In my opinion, they were even too lazy to bring food. Yes, but they did nothing. They didn't do anything in the end. But in Didim, it turns out that we do not ascend to God, but we descend to Him directly, in the literal sense. So imaginative. A bath. One tunnel is for receiving visitors, the other is for. There's also got to be a dungeon there. Everywhere? Well, we have seen signs, we have seen attempts to enter there, perhaps even penetration into these dungeons. But they are closed. Most of the dungeons in Greece and Italy were simply concreted at all. Not just closed with bars there, but concreted. For example, we have a former one on the territory of the Soviet Union. Why? Why am I talking like this? Because Soviet restorers restored the temple in Garni after the earthquake in Armenia. Ancient temple, the most striking example I have of a good antique temple, and restored it well. And they even left this dungeon shaft here. Now they are throwing coins there. That is a priori. Under every ancient temple, swimming pool, even a swimming pool, paradoxically, a swimming pool. Thermal baths, stadium, theater, there are arched galleries or solid galleries, or a solid arched one. Here is such an arched hall, here is such a kind of hangar. I went down to such a hangar for Minot. Imagine about 2019 by 32–35, there are different dimensions there with a volume and a height of 11 meters. Of a huge hangar, where even airplane hangars are much smaller than ours, where modern aircraft enter. That's right under the anti-Jim Con. Absolutely lead. But they have been preserved massively only here. Access. I went down to 5 places. Right here, it is clear where it has been preserved, where it is. The rest are just either filled up, or there is a descent, as we looked at yesterday. Small, very tiny. That's less than your number. Here is a temple. Conditionally by the name of the temple, and then, there is a descent into this dungeon, which is deliberately foundations. But the meaning of these is unknown. No, it's not officially them. They even have, the problem with them, and there are no descents now. Because there are no such surveys being conducted. Such excavations of this scale. What does excavation mean? They stop at the stage of the Byzantine first cultural layer. That is, they see a Byzantine mosaic, a curve of beaten stone. No one will dig further. How many mosaics of masterpiece quality? How many antique blocks? How much there is to dig to the dungeon? Dig. No one will continue you. What you have to shoot. Okay, it can still be a mosaic. If it is a small fragment, it can be cut out, transferred, even put in a museum. Sometimes this is done. In Tunisia, on the territory of Carthage, there is the largest museum of mosaics, the most magnificent mosaics, of course, but not such masterpieces as we have, for example, in Kabira. That is, the real mosaics are antique. This is not a broken stone. I think you will then add photos from Kabira of this mosaic of jellyfish, again jellyfish. It's just all of our 20th century art forms. Cubism. Everything is there, everything. And there, everything is completely. Everything was invented there a long time ago. This is a real mosaic. And the mosaics, which are assembled from squares, cubes from after the disaster, are mosaics chipped from antique sheets. There were facing sheets. We've seen a lot of them too. Some are in museums, 1 by 2 meters, up to 6 millimeters thick. 6 millimeters thick legal sheet, 1 centimeter thick. We are even now 1 centimeter afraid to make facing sheets, because they will crack at us. And we saw it yesterday. Yes. New benches in this one are in the theater or ready. How? Suppose theater. You have pendos, restored marble benches, installed a few years ago, but they are all cracked. Just all cracked. Yes. We have already seen several stadiums with marble ones. Yes, they are not finalized, because they abandoned the construction site, but they are intact. They are still intact. A masterpiece. They won't crack marble. Marble swarm for some reason. The problem here is marble. The fact that there is a whole marble city here. And they say, yes, marble is soft to process, soft to work out, not toothpaste, so that wax, so that soft treatments. It's soft, a little softer than granite, but that doesn't mean it's soft. It's one time. Another problem is to pick up a marble block, even for a statue alone. Today you can cut several hundred cubic meters of rock. You have seen, they sometimes carry several blocks here in Turkey. These blocks are just for the statue in the first place. To approach a piece, a fragment of rock, to make 10 Atlantans of St. Petersburg of such quality. It is also incredibly difficult to make one statue. Odvada Hermitage, for example. I'm talking about them too. Here. Because I'm telling you that it would be nice to talk about ours. Atlanta or Medusa, right? Yes, we met an image that is usually called a jellyfish. Her wings are represented like this, symbolically they were winged gorgons, and she has snakes, not that her hair is moving. It was then that they began to pretend that she had these snakes instead of hair. She has a snake-like tie like this under her chin. And we habitually think that it is a jellyfish. I wrote in a Telegram group, posted photos in the Aphrodisiades Museum. This is one of the most beautiful cities. Lost, have you seen in what place? In the wilderness, in a village, not by the sea, in such a valley. They are again filled up in an incomprehensible way. In the center of the valley. So, there are satyrs in the museum there. He has highlighted the fact that the muscles, not that the physiology is very well expressed, the muscles are allowed on those or on the hands. He even has vessels, veins worked out. I posted this photo, of course, subscribers write to me, Max, so it's in our Petersburg. I also lived in St. Petersburg for the last 5 years before moving to Turkey. It's the same with the Atlantans. This refers to the Atlantans of the Hermitage. I think so. I go in, I think, but how can I compare faces? Because I think I've seen this jellyfish somewhere, this face. Somewhere I have seen that this is not the case. And where you see, well, there are a lot of places, somewhere that you have seen, everything has already become familiar. Not everything, but it was familiar. And then all of a sudden, I really take half. I think you're going to show this photo. Imagine half of it. At first, I compared them side by side. I think how similar they are. The twin brothers are simple. It turns out it's not a jellyfish, it's him and him. I start having one face, and the second stone face. Moreover, we have the same Jura size. The same heads of the same size, both there and here. And we got, well, a coincidence, I think with an error, with a reservation, but a coincidence, an identity. Not just similar, but just identical. It's so similar that it's hard to say any other things here already. Well, let's compare it with an avatar, and with whom, for example, with movies. And not that other creature looks like similar ones from the movie Prometheus, which is also a fantastic film to the first creators, but that's okay. This is modern art, it could be sent. And when there is such a direct parallel, the direct comparison is very impressive. The Atlantans of St. Petersburg were originally supposed to be both male and female. But Atlantans is a proper name. The Atlantan I, and the Titan that Zeus composed involuntarily held this vault. He had, according to the myth, the voices of Ra translated perfectly, that his hands and feet were petrified. He had to hold them, he couldn't help but hold this firmament. And here, we have multiple Atlantans, and believed that both male and Titan, in other words, both male and female should have been pairs. Watch. He's at her, she's at him. The Commission, in the last official version, the Commission decided to leave only the male sex of the Atlantans. I have a strong suspicion that if they made female Atlantans, they would look like a jellyfish. Absolutely. People have a question, but what is it that we have an Atlantan woman so similar to a jellyfish? That's why they stopped, I think. Someone stopped correctly. Stopped it. Yes, that's what it says. That is, the project was already ready. The casts were ready, the small forms were ready, and suddenly the Commission decides no. And we would have male and female Atlantans. And then, we would really have an idea that here we have 10. And they are even in height, if they would get off the drink. We would have stepped off the pedestal and walked through the theater, not the summer, on which you and I walked, on these uncomfortable steps, where in the background of the video, a woman in general had to rearrange 2 legs at once on the step to stop. Because it is impossible, uncomfortable steps for us. These Atlantans would have walked there very, very comfortably. It was also redone there. Yes, she is now an uncomfortable height of 30 centimeters, but they are similar. We reasoned with you that they are made of a block. From a solid block, there's 50. The converted steps are similarly converted into a stack. I showed it very clearly. They have been transformed from large steps into small ones, into human ones. Because here in Miletus, at least the quality of the stages of alteration is it. Yes, then an interesting question. But the stupa of sitting in a theater in Mile is not suitable for Atlanta. The seat steps are not suitable for Atlantans. Galleries lead us to the very top. And if you remember yesterday's theater, the restored theater, we have lost the upper part above all the theaters. The uppermost part is the high, wide-covered galleries individually. That's how I have a cross in my hand. Only there the size is larger and the height is appropriate. It fits, but it's also suitable if you're big, for this high. Well, why, 7, 8, 11 meters of ascent. Well, that's right. But these are big 11 passes. What is 7 meters? Yes, we call these small ones 7, 8 meters high, or 11, and they lead galleries to the very top, which is lost. If we put, yes, huge chairs, then they will safely be in these huge niches with us. That is, they are a sight on the Simos of this architecture. We are not correlated. Professor Toropov, in the 39th year, I have already given you this example here, and described the legacy of Pyronesia. Because I also work on the engraving of Pyronesia a lot, I have made a separate cycle, even 18 issues. And he researched. In the 39th year, in such a pre-war Stalinist Moscow, he releases an album. This is the only normal album with engravings by Piranesi. He still does not release albums with Piranesi. It just attaches fragments somewhere and that's it. And so he will write there. A person feels like a nonentity, commenting on these little men on engravings, on huge structures, ruins of Piranesi. A person feels like a nonentity, looking at the architecture of giants in fear. Quietly, 100 years ago, the architecture of giants was a term that the professor was not afraid of. He taught at Moscow State University. The officially recognized consultant of the Leningrad and Moscow Architectural Bureau was not afraid. Why did the pioneers in the pre-war Stalinist Moscow at that time, the Stalinist empire, we say, the Stalinist style arose? An appeal to the architecture of Pyronesia. Before that, another ruler, or rather the ruler Catherine II, simply demanded urgently from her architects. There were also correspondence with Piranesi, with his students. Engravings were written out. As it turned out in Russia, there are only about 2,000 Piranesi engravings. We have a border everywhere. It's just a problem that the exhibition in the 16th year was there alone and that's it. And they don't show them anymore. She wrote out, she demanded to recreate the same architecture of St. Petersburg from engravings. And we owe this image of St. Petersburg to Piranesi. But the theme of the Hermitage's huge Atlantans, with their juxtaposition, is an open question, of course. But only, I think we are just opening it to him, just starting to explore. But it still turns out very strange. We have a huge facility here. Greece is being promoted here, but for some reason, objects like Turkey also have tourist routes, but for some reason, Okram, Dima, Millet Theater. Practically unknown to me. It was the first time I saw, heard, I thought that this simply does not exist. I didn't even know about it. Well, I'm just maybe a person far from this. And therefore I'm surprised why the Turkish modern government does not promote these tourist sites. Well, Turkey is really known only as a place to relax exclusively by the sea, and only by the sea. It really is. Now, when you said what you were saying, you did not hear, and many did not hear. The Italians did not hear in the same way. This is some kind of, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it feels like it's really a conspiracy, some kind of silence. The total silence of historians, including architects, because architecture could also. Modern architecture researchers could designate and present to us, not from a historical point of view, from the point of view of the design, architectural unique features of Bright. And it would be no less impressive and interesting, I think, to read and get acquainted with us. You're not bad, but you're aware of the same ancient Greek myths, because they were taught at school, in the 5th grade classroom. Are you aware that there is an Athenian Acropolis? In other words, we are only aware of those objects that have been identified to us by official history, allocated to some small pool. As they say now, to some. Here is a box collected, but rationing. There are pyramids, there are wonders of the world that not everyone will even list. And 2 wonders of the world were located on the territory of Asia Minor. And no one will ever say that either. Both are spaced to 0. We even visited one of them, the so-called Galikarnava Mausoleum, of which nothing remains. I don't know what. Yes, it was something. Here we are, us. But I'm telling you, but at least about it, about the wonder of the world, that is, the Mausoleum of Halikarnata. Teachers once told us, someone still heard about it somewhere somehow. And in fact, you come to the Galikarnata Mausoleum, you find nothing. But it's a miserable sight. Yes. You come to the temple of Artemis of Ephesus, to Artemis. Ephesus was also here. But with all the ancient philosophers, Prinsky, who said, I carry everything with me. Right here. Diogenes was born here. In other words, Asia Minor is the very myths of ancient Greece and ancient architecture, philosophy. It's all here with us. It's not there. Well, if you don't just take Aristotle. Here. And we will find that here you are in the temple of Artemis in Ephesus. He's gone. Nearby stands Didyme huge, magnificent, which no one has ever heard of. No more Artemis temple, no more Baalbek was heard on it. And they take excursions to the temple of Artemis in Ephesus, and there they will show you a small perimeter just like a block. 1 row of blocks is destroyed, and several bases are not whole columns. Bases of columns that are broken. I posted a video, I showed, I'm dust for. Well, of course, I walked through this place in the hope, well, at least, well, something must be found about the wonders of the world. That is this. And this is officially considered a miracle. Officially. We have this, by the way, from the Greek came up with him. These wonders of the world were described a long time ago in our country. Officially, this list appeared on the territory of Lebanon, about 2,400–2,500 years ago. Because Anaximander, in my opinion, I definitely won't remember them now, this Ellen, who made his list. And so it went. We have survived the pyramids. 2 objects are located here, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus and the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus. All the others are also destroyed, erased. Not even a hint of them, of the others in general. That is, in Greece, there was supposedly a Colossus of Rhodes, the people's Seton. But we have no signs. They show us, right here on this rock, there was this lighthouse. A well, that's it. Or Alexandrian. You can come up and imagine what it looks like. Approach but, at the same time, we are not told that there is a huge Jijimi temple, side by side, which does not need to be represented. There. Come, wander, look at the drums of the column. 80 kilometers. Per. Interesting stone carvings, a bas-relief of a jellyfish and griffins. Wonderful, and not really. They don't take a tour, as it were. No. Well, if it wasn't for the festival, here we are, but this is primarily for local residents. The festival is there, it's not super touristic. There are not many people, just local residents gathered here, this town Didim. It is not developing. Since the resort is not particularly developing. Maybe the development is, well, evenly, very progressive. And objects like the theater will not tell you anything about it in the summer either. Moreover, you, for example, will be brought to the supposed grave of Nicholas the Wonder Worker, where there are 3 sarcophagi. It is believed that in one of them was the body of Nicholas the Wonder Worker. He was with us in the worlds of the Lycian world, also on the territory of Turkey and Asia Minor here. The Apostle Paul was born, and we are also here in Tarsus, on the territory of Asia Minor. Cleopatra. Many names have visited these regions together. There are many historical famous Cicero rules, led the province when he was sent into exile. There are a lot of such names, they are connected. Thales Tower is the 7th grade. Thales was born here in Miletus, which you and I visited. A lot of names are connected, but no one is totally silent about this, as thousands of cities are silent about it. And here's another mystery. Here we have theaters in Miletus, right? A huge structure, yes, and fields. But there are no other buildings nearby. We don't have a city nearby. We have a theater in the fields, which is 10 kilometers away, yes. You know, if we go any further, we just didn't have the chance. We have one cave-in street, columns have already fallen. We have a temple, and we have baths. In other words, we again do not have a city structure. Destroyed, meaning so much that you didn't even see them from above. But we have a structure of only sanatoriums. As I say, this is an ancient antique sanatorium. This is a classic soup set of an antique sanatorium. We have it there, just like everywhere else. But it has already been destroyed, and it is filled in. And there is no city around. No sign of urban. Roads, nothing found, will not be presented. We are told, houses have collapsed, roads have been destroyed, they were all simpler. All right. And where is the ruler's palace? Even one. Show at least one ruler's palace that would stand somewhere in the center. Our golden Neuron Palace has also collapsed. It was called golden because it was so covered. We are doing well in these cities. We do not have a ruler's palace, no. Roads. There are no ordinary houses, there are no roads. Fortress walls. Protective. The defender of the fortress walls. We have a stadium, the usual set. Theater. Terms. And what else? That. Who has beautiful galleries on the street. And a colonnade. A couple of streets with colonnades and that's it. We have nowhere to live. There may still be a pool. Synagogues. Well, but you and I have seen that it is written instead of synagogue classical, antique. Are you kidding? That's what I'm saying, but we were shocked. Us. Take us by surprise. Well, the ancient structure is written synagogue, only because there is a Jewish symbol there. That's where they drew it to. Some kind of stove was found, and how do we have an official identification? There are griffins, so the griffin seems to belong to Apollo, because there are several bas-reliefs where Apollo rides in a chariot drawn by griffins. But harnessing griffins is enslaving someone, and riding someone, it doesn't mean that it's your symbol. If you do, he will come. It doesn't mean. It turns out that the prophetic Oleg, he rode a horse on a bike according to Pushkin's story. Yes. Symbol. Yes. In other words, it turns out that the symbol is a lie, because he was riding a horse. Me. Well, it turns out, and everyone should have a horse symbol. Everyone who has not ridden elephants or a bull. That's how they interpret it. They will find some kind of text, crooked, completely knocked out to the left, but it will say gymnasium, as we saw in the Alpine Termisus. Huge, without windows. Windows, doors, with us. No ascents, no steps. A huge stone structure with dungeons. But it's crooked there. The Greeks knocked out, and there it is, red in an inconvenient place, the edge of the gymnasium. That's it. This is the official approach. So in the official history, it will be like this. It will ignore architectural features, terrain features. She will ignore the specifics of the excavation, because the snowfell is huge. These are the features of the excavations. That is, archaeological achievements, well, or finds. She will focus on. With a small one, it's not even an artifact, but a text or a letter or a symbol, and it will give it out as the only one. We don't have any other symbols. A very important question. I was interested in why we only have great Greek nail art on temples. There, somewhere in the corner, someone signed with a nail. They practiced it for a long time, to write so crookedly. This is art. I understand that this is ancient Greek art, nail art. Even there, the great Plato owned a nail well. But the question is different. Why do we make such huge temples? We make elaborate bas-reliefs. We have very fine stone carvings. There was no problem to carve a beautiful inscription in stone, write that this is the temple of Apollo, there is Hira and everything else. We don't have an inscription. We have a good sample. It's just unique because it's been falling asleep. Didimi Temple. It can be guided by it. It is like a standard of the ancient world. This is, one might say, the best structure, because I haven't seen anywhere else, but I haven't seen much, of course. But from the pictures, I haven't even seen a real completely marble snore anywhere. From the foundation to the roof, he's all over, with columns preserved even. Yes, it's all marble. It's just not exaggerated, but just in fact, it is the whole marble temple. A huge marble temple made of marble blocks, tiles and everything. Perfectly fitted. And in this, for some reason, we have not written a single inscription anywhere. Although they could have made masterpieces of love, judging by the vulture and how they were working on the feathers. All this is his, and this is the ornament. There, don't know, you say it's jellyfish feathers. At first, I thought it was griffin feathers, but it's not really that. I correlated it simply by Belbeck's exoders. Well, yes, it needs to be sorted out there. Someone's feathers, but the feather ornament is gorgeous. He worked well there. People did not have a problem, but to enter any inscription. But what's the problem? We don't have these inscriptions at all. Not only in the temple in Demo. We don't have any in other places. We don't have an inscription at all. We get a civilization that didn't want to. She could probably use writing, but for some reason we don't do that. And I won't say that they didn't know how to write. It was as if she ignored writing. That's how I can tell. So, I'll go in from a different angle. Subscribers often write. Often many people think that the inscriptions are knocked down. We can clearly fix it with you. There are no hints of their presence somewhere on the decor, somewhere in the center of the original. That there is an original inscription, but they were shot down. Nobody scored anything anywhere. Smooth, neat, polished blocks. Everything is adjusted initially, as it was assembled, so it is. And here is the creation of these places, so it has remained. Fortunately, we were saved from falling asleep. They apparently destroyed civilization, but they preserved originality for us. This is one point. The second point, let's go again from another angle. We are with you. Well, I don't know. Maybe you're writing. Do you write a lot at all with a pencil pen? Or as a rule, you compose and print your texts in electronic form? No, I'm writing. That is, you. You still have some. You have kept this way of writing. Me, for example. I'm writing. Here I have a brand dysgraph, despite the fact that I am a philologist, and according to one of the teachers of Russian language and literature. But it's extremely difficult for me to write. Euro. Here, I have such dysgraphy that it's disastrous for me to write. For me, a computer is a godsend. I have all my 99% of my notes. I only go when thoughts are in the sauna, and always with a notebook. There I can sit and pee. No, I have 100%. I write about others, but they don't know how to do it with me. And that's exactly what I have. But for the majority, for the next generation, okay, you and I will still refer ourselves to those who still had calligraphy quotes pestered at school. The generation, for example, is the next, going further behind us. Most of their writing is related only to school. As soon as the training ends, no one will write, only a maximum of signatures that will already be electronic. Our current civilization has accumulated a huge amount of information, but it is all in electronic form. Drawings, letters, documents, the entire document flow of many organizations has been translated. There are no paper carriers at all. And a huge layer, if the internet suddenly turns off, electricity disappears. This huge layer of information, it just disappears. We still have our level of books. And what is the level of books? This is the level of ancient Egyptian papyri. We still have a verbal carrier. It's either a ceramic tablet, or parchment, or papyrus, or paper. Okay, we're on paper. That's it. The text, but your text will remain, and my texts, for example, will not be saved. Everything that I wrote in Telegram posts, having done in the group, everything that I did with comments, everything that we did on YouTube, all this disappears. So it is with them. We don't know the transmission methods. To claim that they did not write, there and not in the department, did not use writing, and did not record this information. We are absolutely not. Fixed in some other way. In another way. Here we have different ways. I think the same about them. Because it's so powerful. A lot of people of this engineering level of the highest traveled with me. And each of them always says only one thing, it can't be done without a project. The project is necessary. The most complex computer calculations. The project will be compiled for several years, if not a decade. It will be terribly expensive. The project itself, and its execution will be simple. Well, at a level such as here, it is still impossible. We technically can't, and even at the project stage. And here are these projects somewhere, they should have been exactly the same, on the signs. Well, yes, of course. Sometimes we have curves like that, you know, handwriting. They say, I noticed this architect. And here they are. Another problem is the measurement system. Here's the elbow. Here the architect took the proportion. Here is his elbow, and on his elbow. Well, according to the visible view, that's what. What's right there? Elbows. Elbows measured and pushed, the same thing, that we do not have as it were. We don't have any original writing. We only have the original image. Here are griffins, jellyfish, and others. We have reliefs. There is, the brightest. There are no letters. No. And there are no original letters on the facades. Or, they could do. Or symbols that we could interpret as letters. Let's say hieroglyphs. That's where the ancient Egyptians did not climb, in places on the sarcophagus, which they did not find them. Or some pyramids. There are no inscriptions, hieroglyphs in them. They didn't leave them, the same one. And here, at least, there were, well, maybe some symbols. We don't even have any symbols, except for the decor, where the griffin with plants is clearly visible. And we get here is not a logical, non-standard civilization, which somehow I remember. I recently found that it does not correspond. Parameters of civilization. The first one. Here we were reading right with you, when we were driving, getting to Termes. The first sign of civilization is the presence of writing. It turns out that formerly we even have an ancient culture, this real Stone Age. I've always wanted to. It's a joke, I'm serious now. The true Stone Age is what you have now seen together in our expedition. This is the true Stone Age, not stick diggers, this is the truth. He didn't own, but he owned, of course. There was some level of writing, probably, someone will say telepathic transmission of information. I am without exotic methods, that we have specific artifacts with specific traces of cuts, adjustments, and some other processing methods that are even difficult for us to imagine, up to polishing. But we have the first sign of civilization. There is no written language. And then it started. There are no cities, these are not cities. We have listed the structures, we do not have a city one. These are again not urban settlements. There is no infrastructure connecting these places. Supposedly all of this is lost. You know, to lose everything. 1,200 cities have been preserved. We have no written language, no roads. Well, they will tell us, there are Roman roads. Cities. Oh no. The interaction of the city and the village with us. We don't have a city. Administrative centers. We have a swimming pool, a theater. Stadium. Terms. Stadium. The galleries are beautiful. The galley. We don't have a ruler's palace. There are no walls, practically no retail areas, because that's where the places were called retail areas. Alteration of the Byzantine. Yes, but this is already under Byzantium. In fact, as if not quite that civilization correlates with the signs. Formally, there is no civilization. That is, according to formal signs, it belongs to civilization. Modern. There are no formal signs. She is not. That is, some kind of primitive Indian society that was built, which has an administrative department, and there is an Aztec empire. It is understandable that it's settled. They have overpopulated buildings, but she is formally no longer wielding spears. There is also no letter. Well, do you agree? They came up with a knotted letter, there, some kind of towel. Yes, but at the same time, the Inca Empire, because the administrative system, the system of primitive roads. We formally consider them a civilization. Do you understand? Roads. They are formally considered a civilization on these grounds. But this is a huge antique. That's what we're going to say. If we hadn't come with you to the places where the Inca Empire was, we would have faced the same problems. We'll get there and see the same thing. Huge structures, rebuilt by someone, were rebuilt at random on a packed stone. There are no distinct signs. Take a look again. Shift. Yes, but at least you understand this, these terraces, and at least they look like fortresses in shape. But her too, I think. But it is. It looks like a fortress. The mountains also look like a pyramid, but they are not the market, because we will now say that they were not there either. Yes, no, they really outweighed in the same way. For example, since childhood, I have been fascinated by the civilization of the Mems of America, and we have a period of classical magic that created everything, but then disappeared for 700 years. And then, there is no longer the classic late Maya, who are here with digging sticks, with spears, which they conquer, which the Spaniards conquer and destroy civilization already. What is a 700-year gap? 700 years has destroyed it. As for example, here, or Ada is said to have been oral for Homer for 600 years. What does oral tradition mean? When writing is destroyed, that's it. The language is completely destroyed. We lose this culture. And here, it is a huge not civilization, huge not cities of outstanding quality, but these are not cities. That is, she's like alien cities of an alien civilization. They are not logical yet, they are not finished, not resolved. We can't. How they delivered all these huge, well, thousands of tons of cargo, they just somehow delivered. Let's even go to Termes, right? For some reason, they made 2,000 sarcophagi in the mountains, in varying degrees of completeness. It looks like a concrete fill, but also, yes, confirm it. Let's say, yes, that it's not concrete pouring, it's marble. It's just that the graves are in good quality, where it includes marble sarcophagi. And when we say that there are marble, stone sarcophagi, but that's the way it is. Because we went to another place. To the League, yes. Yes, well, we saw you in the sarcophagus in Phrodisiad, but the last time we would have gone to Lear. Yes, there is a fill. We are directly saying what it is. 4. Espenda. Very well. It is clearly visible that the fill. When we can say it's a fill, we say it's a fill. When we see that it is a stone, we say that it is a stone. This, most likely, will not suit either of them. But, to be objective, we are not on those who are satisfied with something there. This is the historian. Their approach is to make everyone happy somehow. And those who order this historical music are happy. Well, here we are. Yes, we built it in the mountains, at an altitude of 1,200. Not a city, not a city, not a city again. Because we have 2 theaters there, because there is one well-preserved theater, one has plans for the future theater. There it is. Blank. Yes, from the outside, it looks like a bunch of blocks, but in fact, in a semicircular shape. And even on the walls of polygonal masonry around, which they tried to make, it was a blank for the theater. This is already a career. What is joyful? Career, by myself. It's good to have a career there. I found it easy to get material there. They just cut off blocks in a way unknown to us. Yes, maybe it wasn't very high-tech, but it's unknown to us. Well, the method is complicated, because when we see, it's unclear. 3-meter straight lines. I agree, maybe it was primitive, but this technology is unknown to us. I think maybe it's too simple. Simple for those who have these technologies. Simple in processing, simple in execution. Not for long. It doesn't take many years to saw off there. But these are no wedges, no slaves, not selected there separately. It's clinging there in general, sawn blocks. It's just taken off the surface. In Petra, Jordan I saw. You see, that is, there are 12 to 15 meters aligned simply. Then I'll send you a photo, maybe you can add it. The leveled walls, cut off, are huge, and there are no traces that someone chose individual stones. It's the same here. Or a completely huge megate, like Baalbek small. Even if we set aside the method of cutting these blocks, in fact, 2,000 sarcophagi have been collected there. Buildings have been assembled. And what's interesting is that these buildings are assembled as it were. Well, not completely. They are exposed, but the blocks are not fastened together. It's very nice here in the temple. And they can be seen that they were very thoughtful people. They put, if we make a foundation plate, then we fasten the plates with metal ties. There are no screeds anywhere in prison, and there is a feeling that this city was either an exhibition, or these buildings could then be transferred to another place. I don't even doubt that they were transported. No. The distance between some buildings is quite small. It is extremely inconvenient to make up huge ones on each other like this. And the second point, we have underground parts, foundations in Termes. You and I have visited many such buildings everywhere, and even climbed into the Korinsky temple, into this dungeon. The devices fully showed what it looked like. The above-ground part and the underground part are almost equal, because we don't know yet how much is already buried there. But we have arched foundations made of powerful, and even polygonal blocks of similar blocks in the same way. And they are also not connected, and the building itself is on top. It had to be underground. Initially, they gather underground, not then somehow fall asleep with a hill. And there's a building. I think they were removed from the foundation. But it looks like these buildings, they're kind of made. Factory. It looks like a factory. It looks like an antique factory. But if this factory were located in a valley somewhere in the fields, I would agree. But I disagree, because this factory is located high in the mountains. There, to choose to lower these blocks to the surface in the valley, well, it's unrealistic. It's very hard right now. But what's to start with the fact that in this civilization, it is unrealistic even for us to recreate most of the objects now. We can't even reconstruct them. We can't dig them out properly, and we can't do research on them. In other words, archaeologists can't even do anything about Termes. This civilization is completely logical for us. We don't have the logic to understand these. The other one. It is different. It turns out that it is a civilization with a different logic. We have no signs of cities. We have no written language. We have an incomprehensible way of transporting goods. They moved easily, but it's unclear how, because there were no roads, no canal, not even canals. And they moved loads easily. Maybe it's a primitive civilization, but it's a primitive civilization, easily dragged huge. In the primitive, I will categorically reject it here, because, well, a masterpiece. It's not logical, but not our logic. The fact that we do not understand something does not mean that someone, the one who created it, is primitive. Yes, this is ours, only ours. Well, the impossibility of understanding it yet. First of all, there is not all the data. Nothing has been dug up anywhere. Everything is everywhere. But this is a civilization, roughly speaking, an unknown history. That is, because they don't talk. They talk about the ancient world, but they attributed civilization to the ancient world, which did not find an explanation. That's how I can tell. It's someone else's civilization. And plus, even the way you know the formation of processing, it's different. We would be with you. We reasoned that we would not do the filling like that. Even here is the method of filling and it is different. And the method of processing after pouring, it is different too. Maybe a few words about filling. It makes sense to say. The fact that we would fill in the blocks, then take them and sheathe them with something else. These do absolutely everything differently. Only you, and I, and you and I, can show this civilization. But only a few people have seriously realized that the megalithricity of these objects. Their number is thousands, just thousands, several thousand plus the Middle East, Asia Minor. Bunin wrote when he visited Baalbek. And behind Baalbek, the stones of countless cities, whose very name has disappeared, are forgotten forever. A few people only understand that this is not correlated with ancient Greece and is not correlated with that Rome, slave labor, which we have, and that device. There is no civilization of cities, incomprehensible ways, incomprehensible logic created, and it is not clear from what purpose. A theater that is uncomfortable to sit in. We've tried it, we've seen it, but why create something where to sit, where only to stand? Even the theater, it will return to the climate. It may have been another one. Well, it's warmer there, but it's uncomfortable to sit there. If the sun shines, that is, it will be hot. It's hot. And if it's high in the mountains like we were, it snows there in winter. There. Stone benches, sit on stone benches. The distances between them are such that you will not lean on anything with your back, only on your neighbor's knees. And you have your legs, if they are tired, you can't push them out. Moreover, it is a form of theater. We don't know the destination, appointments. We're talking about form. Let's talk in the form. And even a temple. This is what we are saying now as a temple, but it is a structure with unknown purposes. Absolutely. There are no letters. Only we have bas-reliefs of Medusa and Griffin, and that's it. And even the form of the theater, the temple of Dadaim, is in the form of a swimming pool. The clearest example of an erroneous official historical interpretation, we had Sumerian silver tubes in the Hermitage. Brought back in the late 19th, early 20th century, it was believed. They wrote articles there. It was officially believed that this is all that is not clear. Historians immediately refer to the ritual meaning. Therefore, they also built temples, that is, religious ecstasy. They built this here, these half-crazy people who are in a ritual frenzy, to create some kind of ancient temple. And these silver tubes were considered to be wands, ritual wands. Beautiful threads stretched there. And so, the priests created hula hoops, danced there, in general, performed their rituals. But they did it very cleverly. Again, the Dutch. There are a lot of such tubes everywhere. Dyeing at home these tubes. Did you conduct a chemical analysis of what survived on these silver tubes, and what turned out to be malt? They were beer tubes, for tasting. Because when you have it wandering in a large vessel, you can't just tell that it is bubbling. You have to be careful not to break the structure itself. Here is the biocomposition of this fermentation mass. You put a tube in there, and you try it. Is it ready? Is it not ready? Is it not acidified at you? And is everything all right there? That's it. Therefore, pipes for beer with ritual wands. And what will sarcophagi, temples, theaters turn out to be? Let's stop at this for now, because Maxim can talk endlessly. Visit his channel, there are a lot of interesting things there. That's it. Watch my channel.